But we're going to focus really largely on combat at sea, naval combat. And we've got these lovely cardboard models from another game, actually. But they're about the right size.
If you know, you know, too, because this is Pirates of the Spanish Main. This was a fun, I'll say, card game because they came in like booster packs. Like roll
well, I am choosing naval combat because it's sort of like an unusual aspect of this game.
For sure.
And B, it's really well designed. They do a very light but effective design on it. Like, you know, like,
I think it's intuitive.
I think it's fantastically intuitive. But I also like dogfighting games, so naval combat is very similar to dogfighting. So,
yeah, what was
you have a dinghy, which is exactly what it sounds like. I'll talk about the stats here in a second. A longboat, which is effectively, you know, like if you're a couple of scrappy kids that are just trying to get into piracy, you probably have a longboat. If you're a successful pirate, what you want is a sloop, because sloops are fast, nimble ships, but they can hold a crew that's big enough to capture another ship. And then we also have a Fluyt, which is effectively like a cargo ship, sailing ship. And these are your targets if you're a pirate.
Oh yeah.
Unless you're a very successful pirate.
When you see that, you see dollar signs.
Yes, exactly. And effectively, most of the economy of the game runs on the morale of the crew. You know, so you have a difficulty roll, just like any other game. And like, let's say, like let's actually use the Sloop because that's, you know, the classic pirate ship. You have 30 hit points, but because we're talking about ships, not people, the hit points for ships are 5 times the value of the ship or of the creature hit points. So, so for example, if I wanted to pull out of my musket and start shooting the ship, I would need to hit it with 600 hit points worth of normal melee or ranged combat weaponry to sink the ship, because it's 5 times less effective to attack a ship with something that you would attack, you know, other people with. And then vice versa. If I have a cannon and I shoot it at, you know, like a group of people, like, you know, 1 hit point of damage from a cannon is 5 hit points of damage on people.
Cannon's gonna mess you up.
Yeah, no, it's a bad thing. You don't want to be in front of a cannon,
no,
generally, or even behind one sometimes. But you have a hull, and the hull is really just a difficulty rating. So this one says -D2, and like the longboat is nothing, you know. So it effectively means how hard is it to sink the ship. And what I mean by that is the way armor works in Pirate Borg, or Morkborg, I think, for that matter. You can tell me if I'm wrong about this. Is when you take damage, you roll your armor die and subtract that from the total damage.
Yes.
So it is actually, D4 means it'll take less sort of damage against its total hit points per hit than the Sloop. And then you have agility, which I hope you understand is the ability to move the ship quickly in a new direction. The Sloop has agility of +2. The Fluyt has agility of -1. This is actually reflecting why sloops were so popular for piracy in the Caribbean, was that, you know, they were just very nimble. And then, you know, the longboat is +3, like the dinghy. But the real big deal, of course, is the speed. Agility without speed is not really that helpful. So the Sloop is the fastest ship in the starter set with a speed of 5 hexes. And then you also have, you know, the dinghy with a speed of 2, the Fluyt with a speed of 3. So you could almost catch a Fluyt with oars, like in a dinghy, which is kind of funny. And then the longboat also has a speed of 3. So anyway, I can go through the rest of the stats, but we're going to stop there because that's the most important set of stats. And then you also have a wind marker. And this is important because these are sailing ships. And one of my favorite aspects of naval combat is you have to accommodate the wind. So you just put the hex down in whatever direction you want the wind to start with. It's probably a good idea to keep it, you know, like as agnostic as possible to anybody's advantage. So I usually roll the die, and then I just count, you know, straight up north is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that means the wind is facing in a northwesterly direction. All right, so we're going to actually use the book because the book's good, and it has a sort of abbreviated rules and I've already started extending the rules because I'm crazy.
You do that. I feel like
I love doing that. It's sort of how I learn the system, though. I try to break the system, and then I find out where the edge of the system is, and then I pull back.
I do that. I'm doing that with 1490 Doom now. Not breaking it, but I'm constantly writing new fun things to add on.
It's really cool.
So,
so you can use obviously these wonderful ship models, and anything that works at about 25 millimeter scale will be fine. But you also do get little counters if you want. We're going to use these ship models because they're more fun.
No, these are just.
This is a loaded ship. It's got lots and lots of cargo, and it's moving between the island nations and the coastal nations of the dark Caribbean. We're not going to worry about where it's going. We're going to call it a Fluyt, and we're going to say that's its stats. And I'm going to come at it with a sloop. And maybe I'll use 2 sloops just to make it more interesting. So I'm going to use like a little sloop. We're going to have a cardboard one and a model one. All right, so right now the wind is going in the 4 directions. So I've basically said straight up is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So actually 4 is here then, isn't it? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so it's going straight south right now if the top of the map is north. All right, so effectively you have the normal turn order. It's effectively, like you roll initiative, everybody goes in order. The interesting part about the naval battles is the direction of the wind is important. And the movement is a little different because it's hex-based movement, A, and B, you can't just pivot on a dime like you can when you're walking around. So, for example, if this Fluyt is going to try to escape from these 2 sloops that are bearing down on it, he has the ability to move 3 hexes because his speed is 3. So on my turn, I would go, like 1, 2, and then I could turn from one facing on the hex to another facing on the hex, but you can't turn more than one facing unless you also move, right? So I couldn't turn around. I couldn't go like that. That's too much of a pivot for a sailing ship, and its speed is, certainly a factor. But I could go, like 1 turn, 2 turn, 3 turn.
Well, it's like momentum of the ship too.
Right.
I mean, just kind of think about it visually.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. This is actually where I'm thinking of extending the game, but I'm not going to worry about that today. So, so effectively, that's his turn, right? So then, you play, the grid effectively 1 inch is 50 feet, so it's perfect for 25 millimeters. If you want to do, like traveling across the Caribbean, you can just use any kind of hand-drawn map and just say 1 inch is 50 miles. And that way you can like sort of, like have your master map of where your fleet is spread out or something.
Yeah,
like
great
that.
for campaigns, for sure.
Yeah. So, all right, so I roll my initiative. So let's start at the beginning. So I'll say this guy's going to roll a D6, and then you add your ship agility. So my agility is -1, so that's a 3. And then I'm going to roll my sloops together because I'm 1 player and I'm running both of them. So I'll just say that, okay, I get 2 plus 2, so that's 4. So he's 3, and we're going to say this one's 4. And then actually I will run for each because I got to alternate. 6, okay, great. So he's 8. So he's going to go first, second, third. All right. And then on each ship's turn, it's really simple. The captain uses their action to move the ship its speed in hexes. It's a sailing ship. Unless you drop anchor or you ram somebody and get entangled, you have to move. You cannot like sit still in a sailing ship because the wind is blowing.
You're moving. Yeah.
Yeah. Then you have actions, sort of non-captain piece player characters, not NPCs. But like if I'm playing
NCPs, non-captain players.
It's a funny name. I didn't think of that. That's funny. then each player on that ship can take an action as well. And then a ship that hasn't taken at least 2 crew actions can take up to 2 crew actions. So if you have like 3 players and you have 5 ships, you might have a ship that doesn't have anybody on it from a player character's perspective, but you still get a minimum of 2 player actions. And then you switch to close combat, really. So, at the end of every turn, you're like, are we still in naval battle?
Right. Am I close enough to hack at something with my sword?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's really 3 things that can happen. You sink, you flee, or you board. And like, broadly speaking, you might board out of like necessity. You might get rammed. Or you might pull off a beautiful boarding maneuver where you literally, without damaging either ship, sidle up next to them and surprise them and jump on.
That did not happen in my last game. We rammed.
Yeah, ramming is probably more dramatically fun, especially with piracy. But it will mess up your ship, and you can't repair your ship completely at sea. So if you ram it too much, you're going to go to port and spend a lot of money on repairs. Yeah. So, but anyways, there's really, that's the arc is, like move at least 2 non-captain actions, real player actions, and then you see if you're still in naval combat and you go again. Crits are different, a little bit double damage, then the hull is reduced 1 tier. So I noticed the hull here is -D4 for the Fluyt and -D2 for the Sloop. What that means is that if I take a hit, I pull out a D4 and I subtract that from the value of whatever the damage was.
Yeah, so if you were going to take 6 damage straight up, you'd roll the basically like armor value.
So when you take a crit as a ship, you not only take the crit, but you also now have to go to a smaller die for your armor die, your hull die. Yeah, so if like my sloop is always a D2. I can't go below a D2. But if we had an even bigger ship that had like a D8, or a D6, then we could, go down. And there are stats for larger ships. This is just the starter set. So, and if you fumble a nat 1, then all the cannons misfired, and they have to be repaired. So that's a fumble. So that means I actually didn't fire. And the weapons must be repaired before I can fire again. So I got to remember that I cannot shoot off my right side until I do a crew action to repair. And repair is a test of the crew skill, which is their PC presence score, with a difficulty rating of 12 on a D20. So I could fail this.
You could break
my ship.
Your stuff.
The ship recovers D6 hit points or no hit points and fixes the cannons. So that's how that works. And it can only recover up to 50% of its maximum hit points. So I can never, like if I get below 50% of my hit points, I can never get full health again by repairing at sea. I have to go into the harbor and either moor and get repaired and moored or get, like pulled out into dry docks.
Well, I think with Pirate Borg, but more so with Mork Borg, what it's kind of known for is tables. It is really known for fun table. Like let's go behind the DM screen here a little bit.
Actually, let's take a look at like what happens.
There's a lot of fun tables that happen that even just like here's a name generator. D20. There's a table.
That's it. You got 4 things to worry about. How far do I move? What does my captain do? What does my crew do? And are we still in naval combat?
And then if you're not, then you're just going into melee combat. You're basic,
or you're escaping. But sinking means that you have no hit points. How novel is that?
It is very bad if you're sinking.
The ship becomes derelict, its speed is reduced to 0, and it cannot take any more crew actions in combat. And speaking of tables, if I sink this ship, I get it 0 hit points. It doesn't necessarily mean everybody dies. I have to roll a D8 to find out what that means. And in this case, they get a 3, which means that it sinks in D2 rounds. So it's either going to sink next round or the round after that. It's going to sink the next round, not the round after that. And that means sink.
Yeah.
So you got to get everything
Gone.
off you want.
Yep.
You know, and then, you know, like sometimes it'll just remain derelict. It won't sink at all. It'll just be freely floating out of the ocean as a derelict ship. And then if you roll an 8, that's a magazine explosion, which means that the entire ship erupts in a massive explosion that kills everyone on board instantly. So there's no like death saving throw for your captain. You're done.
Yeah.
So, all right. Now the crew actions. What do you think the first crew action should be? Just guessing.
Fire cannon.
Fire broadsides.
Yep, there you go.
Bang. You know, it's really the fundamentally cool thing about ship-to-ship combat in the age of sail is that you can only fire sideways.
Yep.
You can't fire straight ahead, except with small arms. You know, they do. A lot of the ships, including in the game, will have a front-facing or a rear-facing ability to shoot.
Yeah.
But you just don't have, you know, like a row of, you know,
your vast
50-pound
majority,
cannons. You know,
for sure.
Yeah. So a 50-pound ball cannon, you know, like it's just, and then, you know, there's things like grape shot to get them. Anyway, so you're always shooting sideways from the direction that you're moving in, and then you, and it's your most deadly attack. So you basically, when you fire broadsides, you test your crew's skill, which is basically the presence of each player, and then you roll that with a difficulty rating of 12. So you add up, you know, your presence, and that sort of affects your roll. So if I fire the broadsides as my captain, my presence will make it that much more effective of a roll.
On a D20.
On a D20, yeah.
If your presence is like +2, you're rolling a D20.
+2.
+2,
Right.
and then you want that to meet or beat a 12.
Right.
So
I would go, is that a 1 or a 20? That's a 20.
probably 20.
So it's a nat 20. So that's a critical hit.
Woo, solid.
Man, that's a good sign.
Good job, Larry.
Yeah. So basically double damage. And that hits. So my double damage in this case is
depends on what you're firing.
yeah, it's from like that would have been from the sloop here, and the damage here is broadsides are a D6.
So roll that D6.
So I would roll a D6. He could counter with his hull. Well, he will counter with his hull. But since I just critted him, oh, heck yeah. Dude, I am on fire tonight. Anyway, we got a D6, and I got a 6 on it. And I am a D6 damage, and then he has hull of D4, but I crit hit him, so now he's
He's effectively taking 12 damage right now.
So, and he gets a 2. So I reduce the 6 to 4, but I am doubling it, so it's 8.
Yeah.
So he would take 8 damage with 50 hit points.
Right. So he was facing 12 because you had crit on the D6, and then you have to take into account the hull itself.
Yeah.
And boom.
Yeah. And he got a 2. If he'd gotten a 1, it would have been a little closer. Can't get a 0. So anyway, that's fighting. Now the important thing about the broadsides is that you have to be at a 45-degree angle, and this actually is one of the things I'm not going to lie, I think this is one of the most amazing things about using hex maps for ship-to-ship battles, how well it works with this kind of concept. Like I'm moving in one direction. If this was a grid, I would move 90 degrees in the other direction to turn. Right? So I use a hex so that I can turn more gradually. And when I look at the side of the ship, I've got a natural 45-degree angle coming from the hex. So basically, this ship here, so it's got to be in that arc, and it can be partially in that arc. Like that, I could still hit, but this I can't. Right. So, and then you could play with basically though we try to keep it as simple as possible. You'll notice I get one good broadside off. I really only took with the sloop about 5% of his hull strength, or his hit points rather. So you can kind of get a feel for the smaller ship wants to board.
Now what happens if we do board? How are we visualizing that?
Well, at that point, I would move away from the ship-to-ship combat, and I would pull out one of my ship maps. And I think this is just a wonderful piece of art because I've run a lot of ship combat in other game systems, and I barely ever get a cross-section map. I always get a top-down map.
Sure.
And with ship combat, the ability to move vertically actually matters because you have these holding areas where you can drop 3 levels into the storage of the hull. You know, when they're loading the ship up, that's how they load the ship, is bottom up. You know, so you can actually, you know, like, you don't have to just use ladders and stairs is what I'm getting at.
Well, and it really helps with the theater of the mind too, to be able to visualize. I mean, I'm a visual guy.
And then you've got nice counters. They give you some good counters.
Yep.
You'll notice there's no grid on the cross section, which I think helps. The grid grid on the top is certainly important because, you know, this is
for movement, for sure.
But it's much harder to gauge distance across a cross section, so you just have to kind of wing it a little more. So why even bother putting the grid on it? Great decision. And then they also have some of these that are numbered because they use the same art. It doesn't mean there's 3 British regulars.
Right.
It's just the 3rd one.
Yep.
So, yeah, and then we switched to that same kind of combat. And in fact, let's say you boarded, you would, you know, potentially want to have, you know, like even a map out for the smaller ship. You know, so you can keep track of who's still on your ship and who's on this ship. And, you know, like I haven't actually done this in a game, and I probably wouldn't, but you could put them side by side if you wanted. I don't think it really adds that much because effectively I'm not doing hand-to-hand combat from one ship to another ship. I have to cross over to the other ship. And then finally, I'm not going to go through all of the actions because there's like quite a few of them. But one of the most important things is that if you have a special kind of player, and by the way, you can play Pirate Borg as what they call a landlubber, which is you're effectively not in any way trained in piracy or the sea at all.
Yeah.
But you can still have a character like that and advance them. You just don't get any special characteristics like the one I'm about to talk about. So at the one of the specialty crew actions that you can take is if you have a deck sorcerer or a priest, you can have them change the direction of the wind. And then also at the end of each turn, like every ship is moved, you also have to check to see if the wind just naturally changed direction.
Right.
And this is important because when you're moving, I just sort of moved earlier and I said, oh, I've got a speed of 5. I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But one of the other things I said was that you can turn 1 hex per hex you move. So one hex of rotation from the center of the ship for each hex you move, right? So like if I go 1, I can turn, 1, I can turn, right? The problem with that is that's not the whole story because the wind direction is going to affect how far you can actually move.
Yep.
And it doesn't get into tacking, if you know what that is, but it doesn't really need to, honestly. But effectively, if your ship's point of sail is determined at the start of its turn and does not change during its movement, so you really want to lock in to a position that's going to give you maximum movement on the next round, especially if you know which way the wind's going to be blowing the next round.
Yeah.
That can give you a great advantage. And then if you're with the wind, which basically means that you're facing directly away from the compass needle, that's with the wind. Mm-hmm. And this is all, by the way, marked on the token. So with the wind is the front half. So if I was going this way, here, let's leave it down here.
Yeah, the wind is pushing you.
Right. Yeah, anytime I'm going in a way that I'm aligned with the wind being behind me, I'm with the wind. And then tacking is when you use your sails to sort of redirect the force of the wind. And you can sail against the wind as long as you do it at an angle. And then if you go straight into the wind, now you're what's called in irons. You basically stop, you know. And if the wind changes or you pivot, the next turn you could start moving again. You know, so if you, but if you start your turn and the wind has changed, so it's coming straight at you, your ships are not moving that turn. You're only going to rotate.
Yeah.
So that's an incredibly important tactical thing to keep in mind when you're doing ship-to-ship battle.
Look, man, I'm no sailor, but I understand that the wind can be your friend or your enemy.
Yeah. Well, using it to your advantage is really, that's what the pirates did. Like they preferred smaller ships, and they preferred literally like sneaking up on these, you know, like big sluggish money boats, boarding them, and then either killing everybody on board or taking hostages or both, and making off with the prize, the booty.
Like I said,
So at the end of the turn, I check to see if the wind has changed directions.
how do you check that?
So we basically just decide if we're going to use flat top or pointed top hexes. So which way's north? You know, that if I go across the board, then I'm using flat top hexes. And if
So we've said that this is north, so we're going to do this way.
flat top hexes. So all I do is, there's a table here for each different direction. I just roll a d6, and that's the wind direction that turn. So I would actually potentially have different wind every turn. Yeah. In fact, it's 1 in 6 chance that I don't.
Jeez.
Yeah. So now I'm 5, and you know if that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now any ships on this board that were facing this direction are in irons. They're not moving this turn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.